And we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Good day. Good evening to every one of you. So, whiskey brothers and sisters, tonight's a good night. Tonight, we are going to visit one of my favorite distilleries in Canada. These guys right here, Shelter Point, and we're going to try one of my favorite peated whiskeys, and that is Smoke Point. So my name's Dolph, and here I'll click on my name right there. I'm president of the Alberta Scotch Society, and I'm your host tonight. And I'm here with co-authors Davin de Kergommeaux and Blair Phillips of this book right here. Get a good look at that. And gentlemen, I'm going to have you introduce yourselves if you can. So I'm going to click on you. Let's start with Davin, if I may. There you are.
Hi, I'm Davin de Kergommeaux. Blair and I wrote that book, The Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries, for armchair travelers who want to visit over 200 distilleries in Canada while we're in the middle of this pandemic. Also the author of Canadian Whisky, the Portable Expert, and Canadian Whisky, the New Portable Expert. And I'm delighted to be here with Dolph and with Shelter Point.
Excellent. Thank you, kind sir. And over to Blair.
Yeah, Davin said it all. Happy to be here, having some Shelter Point, Smoke Point. That kind of, it's hard to say if you have a couple. Yeah, let's dive in.
Let's dive in. Well, ladies and gentlemen, whiskey brothers and sisters, this is the Canadian Whisky Journey's True North Dram and 3. And Dram, well, let's go from the beginning. Canadian Whisky Journey, because us three, we spent time 15 weeks together starting last spring. We're calling it the True North because we're dealing with Canadian spirits. Dram because mostly, not always, but mostly whiskey. And 3 because there's usually 3 of us here. So it's pretty good. Pretty fun. And I just want to show you this bottle as well because I'm pretty happy about that bottle. And someone could explain that to me. Long may your lum reek. What's that mean? And that's from Leon, their master distiller. Does anyone have a Cole's notes for that expression? Long may your lum reek.
I've heard that expression so many times that I honestly, reek obviously is the smell of peat smoke.
Yeah, but the lum, I thought it was a bum and kind of the play on words. I might be wrong. I don't.
Well, when you showed me that before, I was going to ask you if Laura had seen it because I thought it said "Love Leon."
Love Leon.
Lum.
Okay with that. That's okay. She knows I love my whiskey, and maybe the master distiller gets to do that. Last spring, gentlemen, we spent some fantastic time with Leon Webb, the master distiller, and Jason Weeb, the distillery manager. We had a fantastic time, and they talked to us about Smoke Point then, and I put my order in with them, and I'm really, really happy I did. And but it was a great show. And Davin, you had a fantastic experience when you went there as well. So Davin, I'm wondering if you could tell us really quickly about your favorite moments when you went there for the first time.
Well, everybody wants to hear about the helicopter ride. We went on a fabulous helicopter ride to the second highest mountain on Vancouver Island. We were looking down on Mount Washington where they ski all summer. But the best thing, and everybody who goes to Shelter Point can do this, ask them to show you the warehouse, because these guys have fixed the lights in that warehouse so that when they flick the switch, the warehouse is dark and it's deep. They flick the switch and the lights come on, starting at the front one by one, all the way to the back. And it's just like going through a tunnel, getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And of course, when they turn it off, it's the same thing coming forward. But it's a wonderful place with, eagles above, snowy mountains behind, the sea in front, and grain slowly blowing in the breeze. Wonderful place.
A place everyone should go. And it felt like a time warp, or you were in a science fiction movie and you're going time warp. You're just about and the sound it made too. When they showed us that was really fun. I've got lots of pictures, but when we start tasting this, I'll throw the pictures up there if we could. Blair, I'm going to have you talk about the inception of this lovely thing. And I'm asking you because you said it really well in this article right there. So if you look at the top, Canadian Whisky or CanadianDistilleries.com, and that's yours. And a great article, and I stole a couple of your notes. I looked at your notes before we went on. Soon,
yeah, Davin and I were passing that back and forth the past couple of days. But what happened was, from what we understand, is that they approached their broker that they get their barrels from, and he had a bunch of quarter cask Lafroig barrels. They bought them just because of what it did for other whiskeys like the Balvenie and these other peated whiskeys that you're seeing, that just malt going into a peated cask and just getting that flavor integrated right into it in a really balanced, nice fashion. So they took some 5-year-old unmalted and malted barley whiskey that was aged for 5 years in ex-bourbon casks, transferred into these ex-Lafroig casks, these quarter casks, for a year and a half, and the rest is magic, as they say. And it's a beautiful whiskey for the winter time, especially when it's snowing. Like in Toronto, we've had a massive snowstorm today. The biggest dump I've ever seen in my life. It was about 5 centimeters, right?
Good.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I don't know. I think we might. As soon as we get the military in here to clear my sidewalk, I'm going to go outside and enjoy some of this in the weather.
All right, the state of emergency, and you out there with your drink. That's fantastic. Gentlemen, I think it's time to delve in. I've already had a couple sips, if that's okay. And as we're tasting these guys, I'm going to throw a couple pictures up. And Blair, you're going to be the guinea pig in the middle that gets the face cut off. So don't feel bad. Perfect. If that's okay. What I did is I poured some Lafroig quarter cask that you just talked about right there, and I diluted it to 15-20%, so 50-60% water, just to see if I can get the flavor of this coming into the smoke point. I'm not sure. It's a different smoke. It's a different peat, which is weird because I thought it would be very similar, but I think as it soaked from into the quarter cask, and then their own spirit had a heavy influence on this. So I do get the peat, of course, but it's not a Lafroig peat. It's not a deep Lafroig peat. I should say that.
It's a good shelter point peat.
With Lafroig influence, let's say that.
Yes.
Because I can pick out a Lafroig from independent bottlers or blind tasting. I can usually pick out a Lafroig. I wouldn't have picked out a Lafroig for this. I enjoy it tons, but I wouldn't have picked Lafroig. What do we think?
It had 5 years in ex-bourbon barrels first, remember?
Yeah.
So it's picked up a lot of those notes, and like we say in the review, it's Isla. It whacks you over the head. It's so Isla, but then it segues into the beautiful flavors of Canadian whiskey, and it becomes a Canadian peated whiskey in the end. Whether it's Lafroig or not, I couldn't tell from this. What I do know is that the peat jumps right out of the bottle. The peat smoke jumps right out of the bottle. This is it is one of the best peated Canadian whiskeys I've ever tasted. Mm-hmm. The best peated whiskey I have ever tasted in Canada. It was actually a cask strength that really, it would have been called Smoke Point, except they bottled it as a cask strength peated whiskey. Okay. And it was fabulous. And everybody who I was with, and these were very experienced tasters, were jumping up and down. They were so delighted with this whiskey. And it was so great. I sent an email to the distillery and said, "Can you sell us a case of this whiskey?" And they wrote back and said, "Oh, you know what? We've sold the last one. There's none left." but yeah, I just think it's fabulous, and I do get a lot of smoke. But you're right, the sweetness and the grainy, the sort of cereal notes are there. I'm tasting it as I always do, next to something else. So this is the Smoke Point Whiskey Batch 2 at 50%, and in my other glass I've got the Smoke Point Whiskey Batch 1 at 55%. And I think that they were really smart to add a little bit of water to this, because it broadens the whiskey. It gives more complexity and more breadth. And I think like the connoisseurs are going to look at each other and wink when they taste Batch B, because they're going to notice
the 5%
how much bigger it is, even though the ABV is a little bit lower.
Is it still 5% for both? Because the first one came out in 2019. This one came out in August last year, 2020. Was it the same base spirit? Like, was it at the same time?
Yes, it's the same whiskey. It's the same whiskey, yeah.
Okay. So were both of them in there for 18 months, or was the first one in for 6 months and then this one a year more than that?
As far as I know, they both were a year and a half. Give or take, I guess. I don't really know.
And your tasting notes, you have hay on there, but then Davin just said what I was thinking, that they were cereal notes, because I have a hard time picking out hay, but I was getting cereal notes on that, and the sweetness, and I can't tell if it's butterscotch or if it's toffee, but it's got that sweetness that comes alive in it. And
have you ever smelled freshly baled hay when it's still green?
yes,
Because that is the aroma.
That you get.
You know those little square bales, not the great big round rolls. Those little square bales that they used to make. They're about this big, and you
and they still do that for like petting zoos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Good. Yeah.
What I really like is
That's
though
what you
that
get.
the peatiness it's not like a full blown William Wallace blast to the face, right? It's nicely integrated, balanced in, and Davin and I can't really, well, I shouldn't speak for him, but not really a big fan of these like over the top phenolic whiskeys that are just
okay.
So
you're not an Octomore Holman kind of fan right now.
I don't know. I'm sticking to this actually. I'm really enjoying this.
I think there's a threshold beyond which there's no point going because you just can't taste it. I think at a certain point, it doesn't matter how much more you add. It just doesn't change the flavor. So I think there's an upper threshold on how much peat how much peat smoke you can actually enjoy.
I think so, unless you've killed your taste buds so much that you can taste a massive compared to a massive or a massive squared amount. Also in your tasting notes, I saw this as well, and I've been trying to find this out, and I poured this about an hour and a half ago to see if I would eventually, but you talk about licorice notes or herbal licorice notes, and I get the herbal part, and for me, it's the cereal that you're saying is hay. Is that where you're getting that flavor there, the licorice?
No, you have to hang on for a while, let it develop. Have you ever tasted a licorice stick? Like it's a licorice root. It's the raw licorice plant, and you chew that.
So after a while, when you're working on that, okay,
yeah,
it's not.
But you have to sit with that whiskey for a while before that develops. You're not going to get that if you take another sip.
All right, got it. And is it? I get a feeling with licorice at the back of the throat where it's a little bit rough. Is that what you're thinking of as well? Is that where it's developing back there?
Heavily
tannic. When I have a heavily tannic wine, eating black licorice for me is like drinking a very tannic wine and starting to develop in the back of the throat.
Okay. Well, I remember going to a whiskey tasting once in Amsterdam, and I was talking about licorice the way I'm talking with you. And so the next day, this guy took me to a store and he bought 30 different kinds of licorice. Each one black licorice, 30 kinds of black licorice. Each one tasted different. This is a bitter licorice. It's hot.
Okay.
And you can feel it on like about 2/3 of the way back on the upper part of your tongue, but at the side.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
It's just coming right now.
Not for me yet. But I'm going to keep drinking because I don't want to wait. So I'm going to drink and then not wait. Gentlemen, we're at 13:30. Got a minute and a half. So any closing notes? We love it. We all like it. It's good. We'll do the thumbs up if you're good with it, and we're good. Good. And what else? Let's go final notes because I showed the pictures and I didn't want to promote the distillery too much and just be a distillery tour. I wanted to talk about the spirit, but the place is so fantastic. I really do want to go there and looking at the book. And if you care, what page is on? Page 62 of the book. You look on it if you want to see that distillery. So I'm looking forward to going there one day. And although I don't want to break open this smoke point, I want them to make another one. And that way I can get my 2 bottles like I usually have. One to keep and one to drink. Final comments? Blair, let's start with you, buddy.
This is just a fantastic peated whiskey from Canada that we highly recommend. Hopefully there's more coming out soon.
I agree completely.
Yeah. Shelter Point Distillery is absolutely at the forefront of distilling in Canada today. I think that it's clearly the best Canadian whiskey made on Vancouver Island by a mile. And I mean, there are places like Sheringham, which are pretty awesome too. So I'm not saying something that Shelter Point is good. They're going places, and they're just so dynamic and building and doing new things. But anyways, we're at 15:03, and I'm going to sign off there. Yay for Shelter Point.
Perfect. And these, but when you can. And